The first tip is to always check for sales. Perler.com almost always has some sort of sale going on. Typically it's 35% off, which is nice. However, during the holidays seems to be the best chance at a great deal. I think I've seen as high as 70% off sometimes, probably Black Friday. As you see here, on a random week, they had a bag of Perler beads on sale for around 45% off. That's pretty good for just no real set holiday or any reason to have a sale, so it's always worth checking. If you've been watching my videos, then you know I like to use the tape method. The tip I'd suggest is using masking tape and making sure that it's the general purpose version. This has a medium adhesive. There is another common type called contractor grade. This has a heavier adhesive and I tend to stay away from it, but I will use it in a pinch if needed. The easiest way to find Perler bead patterns is to look for sprites of whatever it is you're wanting to make. There are several great resources for sprites, but Googling it will work too. Another good source can be cross-stitching patterns. There are even a couple of cross-stitching websites that will convert images into patterns. It's always worth playing around with. But the big thing is, I always look for sprites. If you have an image of something you want to make but don't really have a pattern for it, then I'd suggest Beadifier. In this example, I take the meme, "This is fine," and drop it into the program. As you can see, this isn't a one-to-one. You'll have to play around with the settings if you want more detail. To get more detail, you'll have to increase the number of boards being used. Each board is the standard 29 by 29 pegs. As you see here, I'll increase the number of boards to 9 by 7. This would make for a really large Perler bead creation, but as you can see, there's far more detail. I want mine to be 3 by 2 for this project. Next is the palettes. I tend not to change this, but this is where you can select your colors from many different types of beads. Next, under Advanced, is where you can turn on to show the board layout. I always like to have mine on, better to visualize how big the Perler is going to be. Next is Usage. Here you can see which colors Beadifier is using and how many total beads there are. Here I'll typically use the option on the right to reduce the colors under 1%. This will remove a bunch of colors that are hardly being used. So I never really use Beadifier as a one-to-one scale or expectations of a Perler bead creation. I simply use it as a rough guide on how I'd like to lay everything out if I were to create it, to give me a general idea of the size and placement of the colors I want to put down. Next up is which iron. Really, you can use a standard iron for clothes and it'll work just fine. I did for years. Here's my old one. However, if you're looking to upgrade your Perler bead game, then I'd suggest looking into the Cricut Easy Press 2. I made a whole video on why I think this is the best iron to use. Check it out on my channel. For storage, I find these small part storage drawers work best. I started out with one, but I'm now sitting at 3. Each drawer can hold between 3,000 and 4,000 beads and helps keep me organized. And they have plenty of room for new colors in the future. You can easily find them online, and I believe I bought mine at a local hardware store for around $30 or $40. The 10 colors that I find myself using the most is black, white, light brown, dark green, yellow, red, sand, cheddar, bright green, and light blue. I feel that these give me the base colors that I commonly use. Some notable colors would be raspberry, cranapple, rust, and butterscotch. I feel that these give me some good alternative colors for use on projects. Overall, Perler has around 175 color variations, so you'll have to pick and choose which ones work for you and your creations. If you're creating anything with Perler beads, then you're going to be using parchment paper. The two things I feel worth mentioning is that I always like to use the same side to iron on when you're reusing it. Once you've ironed with it, there will be a texture difference. It's subtle, but you can tell with your fingers. It isn't a must, but I find it helps. Second, avoid parchment paper that has creases. These lines can transfer and push into your Perler bead creation. So if you go to reuse parchment paper and it has a crease, I'd toss it and start with a new piece. You don't want to spend all that time creating something just to end up with a line across the front of it. Like most people, I used to use my dining room table to iron on. However, I've since switched to using a 4-foot by 2-foot plywood sheet that's a ½ inch thick. As you see here, it's stained on one side that I use as a filming and ironing surface. I can then flip it over and use the other side for painting my canvases on. I just find it's really convenient, and it sits on top of a plastic table and I have no issues. The final tip is to start creating. Looking through my old videos, I can see plenty of areas I can improve on. Heck, even today, if you watch some of my videos, I still make plenty of mistakes. It's all part of the process, and I don't expect 100% perfection. This is just a hobby, and as long as I enjoy it, that's all that matters to me. Every time I create something, it leads me to the next project I want to create. So if there's something you'd like to see me make, leave a comment and I'll get on it.